I was thinking there, just as I was kind of having to think about the podcast. So you seem to have kind of a lot going on, between the business, social media, fitness, TV stuff. When say how would you describe yourself kind of professionally? Like, say if someone bumped into you in a party and said, what do you do? What's the answer?
Yeah, I suppose I wear a couple of hats, and it depends who you're talking to, is how you describe yourself. Um, I mean, initially, I am a food entrepreneur. I'm an engineer by trade. I'm a chemical
Okay.
and biochemist, and then I realized I didn't want to be a chemical engineer, so I started a food business when I was in college. So then I became a food entrepreneur. And I've always been I suppose, competitive athlete to a degree. So I was always rugby. Then I went into jiu-jitsu. So I was competitive in jiu-jitsu. And now in the last maybe year or so, it's been endurance sports. So it's triathlons and running. And at the moment, it's just solely running, training for a marathon. So yeah, it's funny. Yeah, there is no title
Yeah.
that was at all, but that's my own doing. That's my goal was always to be able to do as much as I liked and do everything that I wanted to do and have the freedom to do that. And it means, there's pros and cons to it. It means wearing lots of hats
Yeah.
and being stretched in a couple of different directions, but they're all the interests that I have, and it's everything that I enjoy doing. I do, thankfully.
Okay. Do you ever think like the con to that is maybe or maybe you don't focus on one thing enough, or do you find a good balance with what you're doing?
I have a good balance, but you could argue early, I suppose, when I was just leaving college,
Yeah.
I was solely focused on the business, and the growth we saw there in that period was probably more than I gave it more
Yeah.
love and attention than what I did. Now, in hindsight, it was excessive. It was obsession.
Yeah.
And I have like obsessive tendencies where I'll become obsessive with sports, or I'll become obsessive with training, or I'll become obsessive with business. And for me, it's picking a scope and trying to find the balance there. So I suppose like there's always an argument where if I took an hour away from this and gave it to this might grow
Yeah.
more. Does that scratch the itch?
I get you.
Everyone's different in that regard. I don't think so. I personally have been doing it enough now to know that I like having a good broad landscape of it, all of different interests, and giving them all enough love and attention. Some will get more at different times of the year, and that's fine. Like everything is kind of seasonal in that regard.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so let's talk about your business, Country Munch, meal prep delivery company.
Yeah,
Does a lot. Do you do a lot of stuff with sports teams, right? That
yeah,
seems
yes.
seems to be
Sports,
kind of
sports
the big
catering.
one. Um, when when you were maybe starting, or maybe even now, like what's the biggest challenge to making that business successful?
Yeah, I actually only spoke about this yesterday. I think the biggest issue is trying to find the balance between pushing growth and scale and volume, and keeping the kind of artisan
Right.
high produce, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
at the moment, like, we're smaller scale, higher margin, niche artisan kind of food. So
Yeah.
it's cooked fresh. Now the volume is still big for us, but like we're not a nationwide service. We do thousands of meals as opposed to hundreds of thousands of meals a month. But the difference there is that to grow that extra level, you take back at certain other parts, and so you might have to add more stabilizers and
Yes.
add that is your food to get a better shelf life, different packaging, different production facilities. So there's a fine line there that we tread, in that the business, the entrepreneur element, you want to grow, you want to increase your turnover, increase your
Yes.
profit scale, but the love of the business and the ideology of the business is this high quality good, wholesome food served fresh to fill that gap in that market of sports catering.
Yeah, yeah. That must be like that must be kind of like a conflict. Is that a conflict in your head? Because I'm sure you want to put out, you know, beautiful, tasty, fresh, organic food and all the rest of it. But also, I'm sure you want to drive the business on.
Yeah,
How do you
I mean,
how do you balance that? Or
I think you have to be realistic about things, you know, and there's you also have to be rational in that there's plenty of growth internally that we can do, you know.
yeah,
It's nearly naive to be frustrated that we're not an international meal prep service when there's loads more we can do on a local basis, you know, and there's loads more. Instead of trying to go nationwide, we could look internally and try and improve our margins in the kitchen, or be more efficient, make a system more efficient before going to that next step. So we've been lucky in that we've had quite an exponential growth, being relatively controlled. You know, we started with one team and then we went to three, five, and then this year we had about 10, give or take. So it wasn't from 0 to 100. We kind of had time to learn the
yeah,
systems, what it takes, know what it takes, and then, you know, feed it from there and grow from there. But yeah, it is. I mean, the conflict of interest is then when you look at it on paper, you say, right, there's plenty of scope to grow here. Or
yeah,
this is a really efficient business. So yeah, it's one that you need to check. Like, no, look, things are good, things are happy, keep going the way you're going. Yeah, I think your ego get in the way and be
mm,
like, no, like this, here we can go, we can do X amount of growth in the next few months. But yeah, being semi-grounded and enjoying it, I suppose keeps that away for a while.
yeah. And in terms of maybe we're jumping ahead a bit, but in terms of growing the business to maybe a much higher scale or much bigger volume, whatever you want to put it,
Yeah.
like is that a plan that you have in mind? Like, is there a way, I suppose, of growing it to maybe whatever that large scale is
Yeah,
and still keep the
there
quality
is.
there?
Of course there is. Yeah, yeah, of course there is. There's plenty of businesses out there that I suppose hold a high standard, and do, you know, the nationwide volume. It just, there's an awful lot of logistical work to be
Yeah,
done, and an awful lot of internal infrastructure on. You know, you'd need a probably central hub kitchen somewhere, and then that would deposit food to other kitchens around Ireland. So it certainly can be done. Whether we want to do it or not is a question. You
yeah,
know, it will probably get to that point, I suppose. You know, the more, it's a funny one where the busier the business gets, I get drawn back into it more.
right.
Um, you know, and I've lots of other side quests that I'm doing that I really enjoy, like the media, like social media, like the training,
Yeah,
and you know, there's a huge level of freedom there for me. So the bigger and the more time intensive it gets, it takes me out of these and it puts me back into the business. And
yeah,
you work on the business and you work in it for a while, which in itself is a problem. So yeah, it inevitably will. You know, the way things are going now, it's going every year and
okay,
year. There's a cut where you need to take the next step, and yeah, I'm not opposed to it by any means. It's something that we think about an awful lot, and there is a blueprint there on what to do. It's just it takes time.
yeah. Um, when it comes to sales and marketing and getting new customers on board,
Yeah.
and they're both kind of different things, right? Uh, how do you, I suppose, how do you guys get new clients on board? How does that process work?
There's kind of two different streams in Country Munch, where we have general public where they can order online and collect their meals for the week. Um, Predominantly the main business is sports catering, so teams. So, you know, like, social media marketing is great for the public.
Yeah,
You know, any campaigns we run online will promote that. Or private catering is a big thing in that regard too. But for the teams, word of mouth is a huge one. To be honest with you, we're looking in that regard where teams often, you know, cross over different background staff.
yes, okay,
So nutritionist here may go work with a different team, or an S&C that was working with this team will now work with this team.
Yeah.
They just bring your number, and off, more often than not, a time comes when we're looking for food and we get a mention because we worked well with this team and they enjoyed the food. And there's a nice tie over there where I'm studying to be a nutritionist, so I can speak their language to a certain degree. It's very easy to work with nutritionists when you can speak their language, and they can get reassured that the product is going to be of a certain standard that I can set from the kitchen. Because I suppose the standard post catering wasn't phenomenal, regardless. It still isn't phenomenal, and we kind of fell into it by accident, but it's worked perfectly for us. So we filled the gap there. So word of mouth is huge in that regard. Oftentimes if a team is traveling, they'll play in Limerick, and if we're feeding the opposition side, we'll feed both teams.
Right.
More often than not, we've just had an opportunity to feed Tipperary senior footballers or hurlers when they come to play Limerick.
Yeah.
We work, and then the year after we get a tender for that, or we get it there. So word of mouth by far with all of it is strongest, and then coupled with social media marketing or certain campaigns, sales campaigns.
Yeah, cool. What trait what kind of characteristic or trait would you think is the most important, or at least very important, in terms of being successful in business?
I would say consistency. I think that's the most important. For me personally, because we didn't have the best business when we started, and even outside of business, I wasn't the best runner or rugby player or athlete, but I've always been super disciplined and consistent. I will just continuously show up, continuously try and do better, do the job, and over time that will, it builds legs and it compounds. So I think that got out of a lot of trouble early days, in that we weren't necessarily doing the right things, nor were we making any money, but I was just consistent enough to keep showing up. And after a while, then things do align. I do think you have to give it a certain amount of time. And you have to kind of earn that a small bit. But for me, you don't have to be the most talented or the most intelligent or qualified. I'm not a qualified chef, nor have I ever studied business. But been consistent enough to work on it, to learn and to adapt. And it's continuously stood the test of time for me.
Is it kind of like the 1% thing of just getting 1% better every day?
1% every day. Yeah.
Cool. What did I have for you there? I had something pops out of my head. Other like a person like you that seems to kind of do lots of different things, and I know I'm this way. Do you ever look at, like, I'm sure you're looking at other businesses and even other industries and other successful people, and kind of would have different ideas, different things to do. Is there anything out there at the moment, maybe in your own food space or even not, and that you'd kind of look at and say, geez, that's a good idea? Or
nothing, like, there's nothing that I would by chomping at the bit to get into. I love brands. I love, as opposed to products, I buy into brands as opposed to products. So there's loads of good Irish brands realistically. There's one, like, it's an American brand now, but it's the person behind it. Bayer Nutrition, they're a supplement company, but Nick Bayer is this huge YouTuber that I used to watch when I was 16, 17, and he started a supplement company and cultivated a following through YouTube, and now has this multi-million supplement company in America. That's fantastic. But yeah, I suppose I buy into the story, I buy into the people. And on an Irish level, Matthew Collins from Sibley, I knew Matthew in college, and when he just started Sibley, and like that, he persevered and went through it, and now he is a phenomenal business down in, I'm going to say Cork, I'm right to say Cork, Kerry. But yeah, so again, great brand. Matthew has always kept the brand at the forefront. And I suppose we would try and always emulate that too. I've been the brand, which is
Yeah.
nice, which is good and bad. You know, you're the brand, so there's a responsibility there that you have to keep a certain standard.
Yeah.
But you know, it's much easier to be yourself,
Mm.
and that's the selling point. So, you know, if you're not faking it and if there's no bullshit, it sells pretty well. Thankfully, you know, there was no bullshit with me from day one.
Yeah. Cool. Deadly. Let me finish up on this one, Owen, and it's been very good to chat to you and very interesting. When someone maybe that looks at you that doesn't maybe know your day to day, or might just think, geez, you know, this guy's a great life on TV one day and running a business the next day. What I suppose don't they see in that day to day?
There's loads. There's loads. What don't they
What I
see?
mean, I
What,
suppose to probably yeah.
I think the best one, and it's probably the biggest misconception, is the TV segments.
Yeah.
Like, segment is 6 minutes live,
Yeah.
maybe. Fantastic. I've been doing it for 5 years now, but for 6 minutes, I'm leaving Limerick 6 minutes at 6:45 p.m. That's what I get. So I leave Limerick about 1:30, 2 o'clock. I'll have to be that morning. I'll prep the recipe. So whenever I get into work in the kitchen, if I'm not working that morning, there's times where I'll have to start work and I'll work from early to 2, and then I'll leave work and I go from Dublin. I'll leave at 2. I get there 4. You set up your kitchen from 4. You're 4 to 6. Then you're in hair and makeup and getting ready and getting mic'd up. Then you're live at 6. You're demoing at 6:45. You're finished at 7. You break it down. You wash ingredients back in the car. You're driving home. You're home for 9, half 9.
Yeah.
And then you might be doing that midweek between a shift or between work here, or oftentimes I'll, you know, go to Dublin consecutively days in a row for other events and stuff. So there's the misconception that it's this. Actually, people often think it's pre-recorded, so they think we do a batch room, so it's live every time.
Yeah.
I have to think of the recipe. I bring all the pots and pans. I bring all the ingredients. I write the recipes. So there's a big workload in that. Even just from the point of view, we have to keep coming up with creative recipes every week, which I think it's glamorized to a certain degree. No, I don't by any means like say that looking for sympathy or looking for anything like that.
No, there's a lot more to it.
Same with food or any productions. You know, when we're doing catering for a team of 50 or 60, you know, there's probably a 3-hour production prior to that. Or there's the stock management, there's loads. So, like, especially in the food industry, there's so much in the behind the scenes. When you go to a restaurant and have a meal, the work involved to get that meal on your table is huge.
Yeah.
And look, with training, you know, training is great and all that kind of stuff, but there's hours upon hours of running on the roads or training in the gym that people mightn't see. So again, the people that know, and people that don't. So I don't get caught at all, but there's loads, yeah. Again, it would be wrong to choose social media as you know, the looking glass. Like, it is purely just a glimpse of a day, and probably a day realistically, you know.
Yeah.
So
true.
There's a lot. Good question.
Deadly. Owen, thanks a million. It was great to chat to you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers. Thanks so much. Chat to you soon, hopefully. Thanks, Owen.